Welcome, everyone. We are continuing on our journey through Your Brain is Always Listening.
I feel like I'm on a dragon adventure.
Yeah, it's sort of like Game of Thrones. Your Brain is Always Listening, coming out March 2nd. You can go to yourbrainalwayslistening.com, download a whole bunch of cool free gifts when you pre-order the book. We've given away almost 1,000 packages.
Wow.
So we're pretty excited. And we're going through this journey on helping you identify your dragons, the big emotional issues that you struggle with, and learning how to tame them. So we've talked about the abandoned, invisible, and insignificant dragon, my dragon. I'm married to you, so that helps tame it. The inferior or flawed dragon, the anxious dragon, the wounded dragon, the shouldn't shaming dragon. We talked about the special, spoiled, and entitled dragons. Not you.
It's not mine.
It's not me. Sorry, Chloe.
She admitted it. I was like, wow.
Today,
Chloe goes, why wouldn't people want to do things for me? I was like, well, okay then. She's like, I'm awesome and I do things for other people. So
today we're going to talk about the most common dragon, which is responsible dragon, where you feel like you have to be responsible for other people. Now, of course, you have to be responsible, or you have more older parents who need you.
I kind of like this dragon though. I mean, it has a dark side, but I like responsibility. It's my favorite word. So we just want to focus on the light side of this dragon.
Well, and a lot of doctors and nurses have this dragon. And the origin story is when you feel liable for the pain or the situation of others, often because you felt powerless to help someone you cared about, such as a parent or sibling who was sick. This is just rampant during the pandemic, when hospitals would now allow family members to visit sick people or dying loved ones. Or you felt insignificant, and fixing other people's issues helped you feel significant. So this dragon's actually caused several fights in my marriage because it gets triggered when you perceive others in need. And it triggers back a time when you couldn't help and wish you could. And how you react is you tend to fix, you tend to caretake, you could be codependent.
Yeah, see, I'm not codependent. I am responsible. I am not codependent.
You are not. It can cause you to do too much for others, which
that's disabling. You're enabling, which causes them to then not be responsible for themselves.
And it can actually cause entitlement.
Yes.
And
I don't like
other
that.
People.
It's a problem for me.
So how now, of course, there's an upside to this dragon, and you become a helper. And
right. And we should unravel this just a little bit, because we want to separate blame. We've talked about this a lot, because this can get raveled up and tied up with blame. Like you have to fix things because you felt like you were to blame for something. But being responsible and feeling like you want to be empowered to help is different than doing it because you feel like you are to blame for something. So be clear about that. I very much have this dragon in a different way. So there's another way that people have this. Like the nurse in me, I've almost jumped out of the car before because I see an accident. It's like, I'm the type that will run into the fire or run into an accident. And you're like, that car is leaking gasoline. No. And you grab me back. And I'm like, because the responsible dragon also can be fairly, you have to jump in.
Well, firefighters and police officers
responsible
often have this.
Trauma nurses
dragon.
Responsible.
When I sent the dragon quiz, so you can find out your dragons at knowyourdragons.com, I sent it to the police chief here in Newport Beach. John and I are friends. And he goes, responsible and judgmental. Mm-hmm. He said, sort of fits a police chief.
Right, exactly. But I remember you saying to me, why do you do that? I'm like, because someone has to. Classic
and so
responsible
it's very
dragon.
important to soothe this dragon, but also to empower this dragon.
Right.
But know when you do too much, when you become a fixer, you decrease the other person's ability to grow.
Super important. Hand up is great. Hand out, not so great. So when you're trying to help people, this comes from personal experience with my family, which I write about in my book. It's just really important to, and I learned this because my mother was codependent and thought she had to fix everyone. She had the responsible dragon, the dark side.
And she had a mother who was diagnosed with schizophrenia.
Right. A brother who was a heroin addict.
A father
who was quadriplegic. So she had to fix everybody. She had to take care of everybody. But she also had this tendency to want to bring people into our home and help everyone who were dangerous to a little girl. And so that can be a problem. So because of her, my responsible dragon is like, nope, you got to help yourself. I will help you help yourself, but I will not fix you. So you just,
so everybody now knows you're not going to fix them.
I'm not going to. I'm not going to be more invested than you are.
That's a very important point. And a lot of therapists, if you do the work, they will really be helpful. But if you don't do the work, right, they are not
it's up to you
to do it for. Now, there is an upside to this dragon. All the dragons have an upside. You get to help. You get to be in charge and have others in your debt. You also get to be part of a community that you're creating. Good deeds reduce physical pain. Helping others is altruistic, which actually decreases stress. So doing things to help others often gives you a sense of meaning and purpose and helps stress. Mm-hmm. So how do we tame this dragon? Self-care. Mm-hmm. Is critical. I say this all the time in my practice. Have you ever been on an airplane? And what's the first thing they say on an airplane? If the cabin pressure goes down and the masks come down from the ceiling, put your mask on first so that you will be breathing to help others. And in the New Testament, Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. So if you're not loving and caring for yourself, you will not be your best in loving and caring for others.
And one thing I would add to this one, which we already said, but I want to just add, it's part of taming this dragon, is understanding the difference between blame and responsibility. Because you choose to be responsible and have the ability to respond does not mean you need to focus on blame. So try to disconnect those two.
Well, quite frankly, I could have had a blaming dragon. Blame is the worst hallmark.
Right.
It's the number one self-defeating behavior when you blame other people for how your life is turning out. And even though you were victimized as a child,
I refuse to be a victim.
You are not a victim.
I will not be a victim. But even blaming yourself too much can really cause you to just curl up and be paralyzed with, it's not a good thing.
Well, and self-care is so important for everyone else around you. I'm working on a book for next year called You Happier, the neuroscience of feeling good based on your brain type. And in the introduction, there is a quote from the video, Why Be Happy by Dennis Prager, where he actually says, happiness is a moral obligation. He said, just ask anyone who's been raised by an unhappy parent whether happiness is a moral obligation. And I guarantee they will say yes, because it's how you impact others. So self-care is so important. Healthy boundaries. We're a huge fan of Henry Cloud and John Townsend's book.
Love that
Boundaries,
book.
Where and Boundaries is actually Love and Logic, the parenting program.
It's amazing.
That you and I both love. It's really about setting healthy boundaries. I don't do things for people who
and
are
it's about not
to
rescuing.
me.
Notice we just talked about responsibility. It's about not rescuing people. It's about letting them pay the consequences for their behavior.
Right. And also, another way to tame this dragon is to really know, are your relationships balanced? And our friend, I was just with him last night, John Townsend, has a book called People Fuel, where he talks about evaluate the people in your life with the 7 C's. And so the first C is coaches. Who do you have? So hopefully we're one of your coaches or mentors. Comrades, so close friends and loved ones, we're comrades. Casuals, those are your casual friends. Colleagues, coworkers. Care, people who are dependent on you. So Chloe and Alize and Amelie. Chronics, where these are people, they just always have an issue and you just know. And contaminants, people who actually desire to damage you. And you need to move those people out.
And so you limit the chronics and you draw strong boundaries with the contaminants. It's like, this is a hard boundary. You can't cross this boundary.
Right. And if you're not balanced, if you don't have coaches or comrades or casuals, those become work for you to do. The movies that the responsible dragon love are movies of healing, like Awakenings, one of my favorite movies of all time, or Ordinary People, The Doctor, Patch Adams, and the meditations or affirmations to say every day, if you have this dragon. Loving others as myself means taking care of myself so I can love others. I love helping others as long as I'm helping them become competent and independent.
Yes. Yes.
It is better to give than receive, as long as giving does not create unnecessary dependency. I share the load with others so I don't become overburdened and burned out. Like half the doctors in our country today are struggling with burnout. I do what I can and trust others to God's care.
Love that.
So that's the responsible dragon. Which dragons do you have? Go to knowyourdragons.com and to pre-order the book or order the book if you're listening after March 2nd. Go to Your Brain is Always Listening, and you can download some incredible free gifts, including a coupon for a free bottle of Happy Saffron, our favorite supplement. Stay with us.
Your brain is always listening. I am thrilled to be your guide and show you how to tame your dragons so that you can have the happiness, peace, and the relationships you deserve.
Welcome back. We are still about the dragons, and we just finished with the responsible dragon. We are moving on to the angry dragon, one of the few I don't seem to have, except when I feel threatened. Then my angry dragon comes out. So we would love to know what you've learned. If you write it down, take a screenshot or just take a picture with your phone, post it, tag us. We would love that. And if you go to brainwarriorswaypodcast.com, leave us a review. And if we read it, it enters you into a drawing for a free book, either my book, my new book, The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child, or your book, your new book, Your Brain is Always Listening. Yeah, super exciting.
The angry dragon, he's very scary. Ever since I've been a psychiatrist, I've been wrestling with this dragon. Now, not personally, I'm a middle child. Later on, we're going to talk about the sibling and birth order dragons. But I've been dealing with it in patients. This is often the dragon that gets people into my office.
Something just occurred to me. So I've been talking to people with their dragons, and a lot of people who have the responsible dragon don't have the angry dragon. But people who have the special, spoiled, and entitled dragon have the angry dragon. Because we have this tendency to take responsibility and be like, and it's not that you don't get irritated. That's not what it means. It's just that you have a tendency to be like, well, it's my responsibility to fix it, versus being angry that other people aren't doing it for you.
Yeah. So this is part of externalizing behaviors as opposed to anxiety and responsible, which are internalizing behaviors. So it's the origin story for the angry dragon. So let's just say right up front, it could be because your brain is damaged. Yeah. Because your brain is not working right. Especially subtyped ADD, anxiety, depression, obesity, addictions. I've also subtyped violence. And there's impulsive violence. You don't have a strong enough prefrontal cortex. You just lash out when you get the thought, right? Jerry Seinfeld said the brain is a sneaky organ. We all have weird, crazy, stupid, sexual, violent thoughts that nobody should ever hear and that you should never act. Your prefrontal cortex protects you from that. There's also cingulate violence. If your cingulate works too hard, you're worried, rigid, and flexible. If things don't go your way, boom, you can explode. That's often road rage. It's, when somebody accidentally cuts me off on the freeway or even purposefully cuts me off on the freeway, I think to myself, you jerk. And then I leave it alone because, I don't know, he could have a gun in his car. But for people who are the cingulate, the rigid people, somebody cuts them off,
they'll chase
and they
them
go, you jerk, you jerk, you jerk, you jerk. And they engage in bad behavior in order to get the thought out of their head. And there's also temporal lobe violence. If you hurt one or both of your temporal lobes, head trauma, or, my most famous case, my nephew had a cyst the size of a golf ball occupying the space of his left temporal lobe, and he'd attack people for no particular reason. So let's just be clear. There is a biology to anger and violence.
Okay, you just shamed I'm not shamed, but you concerned a whole bunch of people listening because there's a whole bunch of us who get really annoyed when we drive, but we don't necessarily engage in behavior.
People.
No, but you get really irritated.
Although you do swear sometimes.
I get so mad at people.
So the psychological origin for the angry dragon is you've been hurt in the past, or you've been shamed or disappointed, or more commonly, others modeled angry behavior for you. And you watched your mom's temper or your dad's temper. Or your siblings' temper, and they taught you it was okay. What triggers the angry dragon? When you're reminded of hurts, shame, or past disappointments. When you don't get your way, if your frontal lobes are busy. Sometimes anger is triggered to get others to leave you alone. Think of teenagers or
even people who've been traumatized. Sometimes anger is a way to keep a barrier. Sometimes I read this really interesting thing about people who refuse to forgive and hold on to anger, that it's because they feel powerless. They're afraid. They don't know how to draw boundaries, and they're afraid that if they let go of the anger, they're opening themselves back up because they don't know how to draw boundaries, that if they let it go, they're opening themselves back up to being hurt. And that those two are two separate things. But most people haven't worked on boundaries. They don't feel confident. So it's a lack of confidence.
Well, and sometimes in relationships, if people are overwhelmed by words, that they'll lash out to get the other person to be quiet, to stop it, because they can't engage.
It's too much. The same it's just overwhelming.
Of language.
I have a hyperverbal child. It's overwhelming when she starts that.
So how does the angry dragon cause you to react? Rage, irritability. You're rude. You bully. You belittle. You're annoying. Fighting, punishing, stonewalling, contempt. And if you want to get divorced, stonewall.
Yeah, anger is not always about lashing out.
If you want to get divorced, there's really actually great research. If you engage in shaming other people, contemptful behavior, or you stonewall, like you just won't talk about it. That's actually one of the predictors.
We've had a couple of fights in our marriage, and the one thing I'm really happy about is the way that we fight. We made a decision when we got married, we weren't going to sleep in separate rooms. And I think that that's a really scary thing when you start doing that and disconnecting and punishing the other person by going away, and it can just lead to problems. Now, if there's violence, then yes, but I think it's a bad habit. And I like that habit that we don't do that. I'd rather argue with you than one of us go away. I'd rather resolve it.
So how often do we argue?
Not often, but the few fights we've had, we've resolved that way, which is better.
So how do you tame this dragon? You see it as a problem that you need to solve. You get really clear on your goals. I want a kind, caring, loving, supportive, passionate relationship with you. I always want that. Will the angry dragon get me that? Absolutely not. It'll be like the Game of Thrones fight with you. So, yeah, no. Be aware of the danger signs. Do you start breathing too fast? Some people actually see red
I feel
ahead of
red.
time. If you feel hot, that can matter. If your muscles start to feel tense, if you start to get confused or overwhelmed, just begin to notice what happens. Protect your blood sugar. People are more likely to lash out when blood sugar goes low. We've talked before about this study of 107 couples where they measured their blood sugar before bedtime. And then they gave them voodoo dolls. And they said, we want you to express your feelings about your partner with the pins in the dolls. And the people who had the lowest blood sugar had more than twice the number of pins
that reminds me.
in the dolls.
So my pharmacy messed up and didn't send my progesterone. So hormones matter too. So they didn't send my progesterone. And I called them. I'm like, why did you guys mess they're like, oh, I don't know. We'll get it straightened out. Well, it took them like a week to get this straightened out with my prescription. And I was like, I called them back and I'm like, you are going to be reading about me or watching me on the 6 o'clock news. Like I found myself just like being prickly. Like it's just, you need to pay attention to things like your food and your hormones. And but I knew it was me. And I just found myself, everything people were saying was just bugging me. Like just bugging me. Like, so I just like
the prickly.
Oh, I just had to
dragon.
go away. Yeah.
Protect your sleep. You get poor sleep, you're more likely to be irritable the next day. Breathing. When you start to get angry, just get control over your breathing. 10 breaths, 3 or 4 seconds in, 6 to 8 seconds out. Just do that 10 times. And then while you're breathing, consciously ask yourself, what's the goal in this situation? Is the goal for me to be scary? Is the goal for me to push people away? So that you act in ways that make you proud. Take a time out. When you feel like you're going to explode, you need to get away from the situation. And I have a bathroom technique. It's like, you're really upset, I have to go to the bathroom. Nobody argues with you if you go.
The problem is now I know your secret. I'm still not going to follow you into the bathroom, but.
Right. And if you know I have to go to the bathroom, either I really have to go or I'm just protecting you.
Right. You don't, I've never seen you, like I'm more likely to snap than you are, so.
And then lastly, know when to seek help. Mm-hmm. Getting help is a sign of strength, not weakness. This is the dragon that needs to be scanned.
Yes, but let's always, like we said before, there's always a dark side and a light side, right, to these dragons. There's a time that anger is appropriate. There's a time that as long as you're using it appropriately. So you don't want to just, think to yourself, every time I get angry, it's wrong. No, there are times that anger is appropriate. So, if someone's threatening you or hurting you,
then you need the dragon.
You need that dragon. You need that dragon to breathe hot red fire.
From the book, anger can push you toward your goals, help you overcome obstacles, release steam, express feelings, and right wrongs as far as you don't create more wrongs. Anger can be turned toward being assertive, creative energy, providing a sense. When someone tells you you can't do something,
I'm going to do it.
So when I tell you you can't do something, you just know I want you to do it.
Right. We almost had an argument recently because he started to say you can't, and then he stopped himself. I literally felt myself going on. And then you stop and you go, we probably should do this. And I'm like, but immediately I was like, because you know better.
So what are the movies angry people like? Angry Dragons, The Shining, Jaws, Halloween, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
No.
Silence.
Well, I do like
of the
Silence of
Lambs.
the Lambs. I don't like any of the other ones.
And affirmations or meditations. I express my anger in ways so that others can hear. I accept responsibility if my anger has hurt someone. I direct my anger appropriately. I do not use anger to scare or frighten other people. I express my anger in words, never physical actions, unless someone I love is threatened.
Right. Someone's going to hurt your kid. You're going to lose it.
When we come back, we're going to talk about Tana's dragon,
Oh, geez.
the judgmental dragon, who often says, if I was judge, jury, and executioner.
No, I am judge, jury, not if. There's no if in that sentence.
The book is Your Brain is Always Listening. If you go to yourbrainisалwayslistening.com, it'll tell you how to pre-order the book, how to download 4 free gifts, a playbook to know your dragons quickly, so you get that right away. Also, Magnificent Mind with Medical Hypnosis, a program I did that has 6 hypnosis audios for you. You get access to a free event where I answer your questions for 2 hours on March 17th, and a coupon for a free bottle of Happy Saffron. Stay with us.
Welcome back. We are on our journey with the dragons. And now today we are moving on to the judgmental dragon. Just FYI.
This is Tana's primary.
It's not my primary, it's just one of them. So anyways, before we get going, I am reading this review, and it's because I'm selfishly reading this one. This is from EMM3005 from the United Kingdom. It says, just listened to the first chapter of your new book, Tana. I have to purchase this. Very powerful. God really does use you to help others. You have helped me before to get healthy. I've let it all go, but now I'm getting back on track. From Scotland.
Wow.
Isn't that cool?
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
And the subject line is God bless you both.
Yeah, love that. Thank you.
You are our payment for doing this. And so we love when you leave us a comment, a question, or a review. Do it at brainwarriorswaypodcast.com. Also, what have you learned? Write it down, post it on any of your social media sites, hashtag Brain Warriors Way podcasts. Also, take the dragon quiz at knowyourdragons.com and send it to all of your friends, because if you know what their dragons are, you're just more likely to be helpful. We did it as an executive team, and knowing other people's dragons, it just helps you to be kinder to others, so you can help tame their dragons, or you can make their dragons roar to life based on your behavior. And so just imagine your dragons. So you have a dragon thunder. A thunder is a herd of dragons. And I have my dragons. And so sometimes, because you and I love each other passionately, deeply, but sometimes the dragons just get in the way of us having as much fun as we could have. So we don't want that for you. So
right.
But you have to know your issues.
If you recognize it, it's so much easier.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about the judgmental dragon. And I, quite frankly, live with this dragon.
He'll often say it like it's like I care or something. It's a bad thing. But like we always talk about a dark side and a light side, we're going to have to talk about the light side of this one because it can keep you out of trouble too.
There's an upside to this dragon. We will talk about it. The origins of this dragon. So where does it come from? you grew up where you perceived a lack of fairness, where people played favorites, where people were inconsistent in how rules were applied, when things were scary. And you needed to begin to see things as black and white,
right and
as
wrong,
a protective mechanism. This dragon gets triggered whenever you feel injustice to yourself or to other people.
Yeah, I have a huge thing about justice, fairness, and justice.
I know one of our first fights or one of our first disagreements was you found out I had testified in death penalty cases for the bad people. And you're like, how could you do that?
One of the big fights we got into was when you were on Larry King.
Oh, God rest his soul.
I know, yeah. Poor Larry King. But you were on Larry King and you didn't tell me that, well, I figured it out. You were using me for carpool lane because you had to get there quickly. They called you last minute. He's using me for carpool lane because he needed to get up there fast. And I didn't think ahead of time, like we didn't talk about what he was doing. And on the way up there, he asked me to look something up for him. And I knew I had just heard something on the news and I'm like, oh my God, you're going to go on there and talk about this poor little girl who was gang raped. You're going to like talk about why those guys did it and give them some kind of, and I lost my mind. He couldn't even say a word all the way up there.
I was not going to do that. She projected that.
And I'm like, you have daughters, you have granddaughters. I was like.
And the judgmental dragon.
I'm like, they need to be like, those guys need to have this done to them and that done to them.
So how does the judgmental dragon cause one to react?
Like that.
Condescending, critical, moralizing, telling others what they should and should not think or do. The whole ride up from Orange County to Los Angeles. If I was king, if I was governor, if I was the ruler.
Yeah. So here's the only problem. The only problem is for me in my 30s, I actually like had this idea that people should listen to me and maybe they would. Like the wisdom of age, you realize I'm not queen of the universe. People are not going to listen to me. So mostly I mutter to myself now. Well, maybe not to myself, but I know no one's going to listen.
So during the pandemic, judgmental dragons seemed to breathe fire over the entire world, causing people to quit judge others for their actions, wearing a mask, not wearing a mask. Then, after these judgmental dragons had already been let loose, the death of George Floyd caused them to run even more wild. Many people unfairly judged all police officers based on the actions of a few. Others made blanket judgments about protesters, blaming all of them for the rioting, looting, and mayhem that took place, even though most protested peacefully. The upside. What's the upside to this dragon? This dragon can help you feel in control, so often from not feeling.
Yeah, it's a rigidity. Like I know for me, it's a rigidity to try to create rules that keep people safe. I'm a big fan of rules.
And clarify your values and goals, just what you just said. It also wants to right wrongs. I think that's a big deal.
Huge.
For you. And protect those who are victims. It can guide your actions and help you make pro-social choices. Like anger, judgment can be good if it's directed positively for present day reasons.
There's also a form of judgment that we think of that's a little different, which is discernment. You want that kind of judgment. You want discernment, like being able to discern because it'll keep you safe. Is this right or wrong? Is this good or bad? Is this going to hurt me or my family? Discernment is really important. So you don't want to lose that.
So strategies to heal this dragon. Ask a few questions when you feel judgmental. Is this problem now? Or am I trying to fix something that was wrong in the past? Do you have all the facts? Or are you making assumption about others that you do not know are true? Forgiveness is huge. And there's a process from Dr. Worthington that we often talk about called REACH. for forgiveness, where you recall what happened. You empathize with the other person. And that's the hard thing for many judgmental dragons to do. You altruistically, that's the A, give the gift of forgiveness, because you often say, when you hold on to a hurt, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And so,
yeah, it's damaging you more than it's damaging them.
Commit to it. That's the C. And the H is hold on to it.
And let's just be clear. There are some things that are really hard to see from another person's perspective. But if you can't do it for them, do it for yourself. And just because you forgive someone does not mean they get out of consequences, does not mean that you need to have close proximity to them, does not mean that you don't draw boundaries. It doesn't even mean you need to see that person. It just means you let the anger go for your own benefit.
So what movies does this dragon like?
Probably ones I like.
Let's see. Tell me if you like any of these movies. Rambo.
Yes.
Taken.
Love it.
Law-abiding citizen.
Of course.
Gran Torino.
Oh my God. One of my all-time favorites.
Dirty Harry.
Love him.
Payback.
I don't even know what that is.
Kill Bill.
No, not really. The other ones, yes.
They love vengeance.
I call it justice. You call it vengeance. Tomato, tomato.
Be curious, not furious. It's something we say a lot. Behavior is way more complicated than most people think. Judge behaviors, not people. And get out of your bubble. If you're quick to judge others, it may be due to unfamiliarity with others outside of your immediate social circle. And the
if it's social judgment, we're talking a different thing. Things that yes and no, they're connected, but creating black and white rules to keep yourself and your family safe, and things you do because you grew up in a toxic environment, that can reach into social issues. But be clear, is this something I'm doing because I feel immediately in danger? Or is this something that is an old, I know I grew up in a family, not a family, but my stepfather was very racist. And so for me, that's toxic. I grew up knowing in my younger adulthood, that was a toxic thing. But ask yourself, is this because of my past? Is this something that is my own thought, or is this something that's because of how I was raised? They don't have to be connected.
The affirmations to say and meditate on every day. I'm going to post these on your mirror. I trade judgment for understanding. I release judgment so I can feel free. I treat people in pain with compassion, not more pain. I am a role model for what I want to see in the world. I foster peace in this situation, so there will be more peace in the world.
Well, I was going to say I reject it, but I actually like those. Those were good. So there you have it.
So what did you learn? Write it down, take a picture of it, post it on any of your social media sites. You can hashtag Brain Warriors Way podcast, or dearly love you to share your brain is always listening.com so people can pre-order the book, get some great free books. We want you to know your dragons, tame them, and then share this information with those you care about. We don't want your life to end up like the finale of Game of Thrones, where the dragons murdered 1 million people. We don't want that. Tame your dragons. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. We are continuing to identify and tame the dragons from the past that are breathing fire on your emotional brain. Pay attention and just try to pick out one thing you learned, write it down, take a picture of it, post it. It really helps us grow the podcast and create a more dragon-free world. But, ultimately, Brain Warriors Way, we're trying to give you tools to arm, prepare, and make you aware of the health of your brain so you can win the fight of your life to keep your brain healthy. Today is a really important dragon. It's a dragon that taunts so many people.
Probably almost everybody, right?
And the pandemic has exploded this dragon. I think of it almost like Godzilla,
right?
Stomping around the world. And that's the death dragon.
And at some point, I think at some point in almost everybody's life, they experience it.
Well, and it's always with us. Now, typically, children don't have this much.
Right.
Typically, it is born in midlife when your parents die. Or you have the parents of your friends die.
Right. So I remember this dragon in particular, and I write about this in my book, devastated me in my 20s.
And sometimes it starts
devastated
early.
Me in my 20s.
If you have health problems.
Yeah.
When you're young, or you have siblings or parents who have health problems.
Yeah, no, I got cancer. I was diagnosed with cancer in my 20s, which then meant I lost everything important to me, that I thought was important to me. And my mom was diagnosed with a congenital defect that she had to have brain surgery for at the same time. And I just went in like that. It can really throw you for a loop. And so sometimes it's not just because of, natural aging midlife crisis. Sometimes it's just, and like the pandemic is doing that now. It surprises us.
So it can start earlier if you're faced with death, as you were, accident, illnesses, or for teenagers. And this is more common now than ever before. Teenagers have friends who commit suicide.
Yeah.
It can happen later with the fear of aging, although that starts early, right? I mean, everybody's sort of excited to turn 20.
And then late 20s, it starts.
But 30, they're not excited
Right.
about. And 40, they're not excited about. And 50 can be devastating. And I think it's sort of funny in the sense that I love being 66.
Yeah.
I don't want to be 40.
Yeah. I went through that stress early on. And then all of a sudden I went to the other side. Now it's like, whatever, I love it.
That fear of aging, losing your youth, having a life that's not meaningful. Fear others will not survive or thrive without you.
That's a big one.
That's a big one for you.
This is a big one for a lot of mothers. That's a big one for a lot of mothers. I didn't care that much before I had Chloe. It's like, I was very, a lot more willing to take risks and go on, vacations and do certain things. And the minute I became a mom, I was like, oh, I can't do that because this little person isn't going to live without me, or at least not be their best.
And the death dragon is triggered whenever you see your mortality, such as in a near miss accident, an illness, or when someone you care about dies. I mean, after my dad died last year, I've thought more about death this year than ever that I can remember. So how do you react if the death dragon is breathing fire on your emotional brain? You have a fear of dying. It preoccupies you. You have a pervading sense of doom. You can even have panic attacks that you don't understand. So is there an upside to this dragon? There's an upside to all of them. Knowing you're going to die can actually help you live a more meaningful life, plan for the future, and work to create a legacy. Cherishing each day can help you resolve interpersonal conflicts and use listening skills and empathy rather than stewing, ignoring, or holding grudges. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who's the famous psychiatrist who studied death and dying, says it is the denial of death that is partially responsible for people living meaningless, purposeless lives. Because when you think you're going to live forever, you do not take care of the issues that you need to take care of today. All right. So how do you tame this dragon? Well, one, accept death is a natural part of life. And I think a couple of things really helped me with this dragon. In the late 1970s, there was a book published by Ray Moody called Life After Life. Mm-hmm. And it was about a whole series of people who had near-death experiences and then what happened. And it just gave me comfort to know that a lot of people, they see the light, but then they see loved ones that were crucially important to them. That book just gave me a lot of peace. My faith leads me to believe this isn't it. This is not the only life for us, that there is more. That really helped. And then in college, I took a class on death and dying.
Me too.
And I had to write my own funeral. And when you live with the end in mind, you end up saying something you and I say a lot, is, does this problem I have now, does this issue I'm dealing with now have eternal value? Right. Such an important statement.
And really focusing on that is, I think, what helped. We talked about earlier about how sometimes parents, especially mothers, when you have a baby, it's like, when you're younger, you will take chances, and then all of a sudden this baby comes along. And I don't know if anyone else out there has had this issue. I had a baby, and all of a sudden it's like, because I faced death early, because I faced that mortality issue early, I started bargaining with God. I'm like, please just let me get her to X age, to where she's self-sufficient. Then she would hit that age. I'm like, she's not ready. I thought that she'd be okay by now. Please let me get her to this age. And then if something happens to me, it's okay. And you start bargaining with God, nothing's even happened yet. So that's how much this can torture you, this death dragon. But I think what really started to help me was, it was faith, because I literally would step back, and it's like, we're all going to die at some point. The more important question is, how are you going to live? So what are we going to do while we're here? What am I going to do with the time that I have with her while I'm here? What lessons do I want to instill with her?
To be in the present, because when you're in the past with regret, that feeds depression. Or the future with fear, that feeds the anxious dragon. You suffer. And
then I would go one step further, and I would just thank God for letting me be her mother every day, because she's not really mine. I mean, I'm her mother.
She's totally not yours anymore.
Right. She's not mine. I'm her mother. I was gifted this gift of being allowed to mother her.
You've done a great job, because now she's her own person. She doesn't belong to anybody. Right.
And she makes us clear.
One of my favorite strategies for this dragon, and you're going to find it irreverent, and I don't know what to tell you. Just deal with it, I suppose.
What are we going to say?
List the good things about dying.
Oh, yeah.
And here are some of mine. So my faith leads me to believe I'll have eternal life. I may get to see my father and grandfather again. No more people coughing on airplanes. I hate that.
Even prior to COVID.
No more traffic. I live near LA, so this is a big deal. No more internet trolls. Come on, let's be thoughtful. Try not to do drugs before you post. No more divisive political campaigns, at least I hope so. No more taxes, no more spam or junk mail. I won't have to shave anymore and deal with occasional cuts and bleeding. I won't have to get my teeth cleaned and have someone with a sharp metal object poking around my mouth. No more root canals. No more computer crashes where I lose an hour's worth of work.
For me, it's no more news.
Affirmations. You need to tame the death dragon. I will live a life that matters. I will live a life fully and fearlessly. I will be present today in all I do, because today is all you will ever have. Death teaches me that if something is meaningful, I do it. But if it's not meaningful, I don't do it. Death is just the next stage of eternal life. We hope this has been helpful for you. Your Brain is Always Listening, out March 2nd. If you go to yourbrainisAlwaysListening.com, pre-order the book, we have special downloads for you, including a free bottle of Happy Saffron. Stay with us.
Thank you.
If you're enjoying the Brain Warriors Way podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or 5-star rating, as that helps others find the podcast.
If you're interested in coming to Amen Clinics, use the code PODCAST10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com. For more information, give us a call at 855-978-1363.